Well, heading into the weekend, we could have some strong thunderstorms, but I think as we look kind of down the road a little bit, some big changes are on the way. And what we're going to see is a shift in where we see the storms, especially as we head into the middle part and the late part of next week. And this is an interesting setup by Thursday and Friday, kind of a cool pattern setting up in the east, which actually lines up a lot with what NOAA's thinking over at the Climate Prediction Center. So for the next 8 to 14 days, here's the newest outlook from NOAA, from the Climate Prediction Center. Below average temperatures across the east. I think that correlates with the trough that I just showed you. And then as we head into the month, let's take it out even further. And of course, we've got the hot air across the west with that big ridge of high pressure building in. And I think that's going to end up leading to pretty much what they're agreeing with, above normal temperatures across the west. Here in the east, we'll likely be pushed back a little bit just because of the troughiness and potentially that strong upper low that could draw down some of the averages through the month. So maybe equal chances if you look at things throughout the month. And precipitation, I take this with a grain of salt, but maybe above normal chances across the south and the northeast. And that ridge across the west could keep us below normal here across parts of the Rockies into the Dakotas. So as of May 31st, 529 tornadoes for the month compared to last May's 199, a whole lot more this year for sure. And I've been talking about the shift of where we see the tornadoes. I think we see overall significantly lower amounts of tornadoes as we head into June, not just because of what we climatologically see. In these areas where tornadoes mostly form, the weather pattern is changing up and it's going to be more cool, and I think that is going to reduce the tornado threat. But as you head into June, on average, you do start to see more storms here. That doesn't mean we will. It's just that climatologically, and again, I think that's sometimes because we get that big ridge of high pressure across the west and those severe storms kind of dropping in like this from the northwest. Will that happen again? Well, the setup over the next couple of weeks starts to kind of shift that way, right? Look at this big high building across the west. You've got some tight height lines here in the upper levels driving in that northwest flow. But will we see these thunderstorm complexes develop here somewhere on the north and northeast side of this ridge across the west and slide southeast? To be determined, right? That's something that I'll be watching. And speaking of the cool air, look at these temperatures as we head into next week. Lows could be in the 40s, maybe even some 30s in a few spots as we head into early Monday. Still a little early, but high temperatures cool here in the north. 50s and 60s on the table early next week, but look at the heat building across the south. 90s, maybe even triple-digit heat here across the low country of North Carolina and South Carolina, along the coastal plain there, and then down into South Georgia too, and Middle Georgia. Mid to upper 90s are looking a little more likely as that heat starts to build in. The good news about tropical activity over the next 7 days, at least as we head into June, is with a strong wind shear that we're seeing across the Gulf. No tropical activity expected at this point in time, but some severe weather on the table for Saturday, pretty much here from South Dakota, with the highest risk right here along the high plains, the Front Range, down into parts of New Mexico and West Texas. And look, there could even be some strong storms here across the deep south and into parts of Kentucky and Tennessee as well. A few tornadoes could spin up to not a high risk, but can't be ruled out across parts of Colorado too. Here comes your storms as we head into early Saturday morning. The biggest threat for storms early in the day will be here across the south. We'll see dry weather here across the east coast for most of the weekend, but we do watch this rain continue to advance east. So by Saturday evening, really getting close to Cincinnati, all the way down toward Atlanta. And then as we get into early Sunday morning, that rain starting to push closer to the east, closer to Pittsburgh, into Cleveland, up toward Erie, PA. Temperatures will be chilly on Saturday, especially here in the Northeast. It was a cool start in many areas, and we'll warm up some into the afternoon. We're talking about highs up into the 70s across the Northeast. Clouds and rain here will keep us a little bit cooler across the Mid-South and down into the Deep South. Across the Central Plains, as we move through the early morning hours, we may see a complex of storms move close to Dallas with a few showers here across Nebraska, but the big stuff starts to pick up as we head into the afternoon, busting out here across Colorado, again into New Mexico and West Texas. Some hail possible with these, some damaging winds as well. High temperatures on Saturday here will be hot, especially across Texas. A lot of 90s out there with mid to upper 80s here across Oklahoma. Quite a bit of cloud cover here across the south. Again, that will keep us a little bit cool, although humid and kind of sticky. And then severe threat shifting now to the northern plains from Nebraska up into the Dakotas, even parts of Minnesota and Iowa as we head into Sunday, as our next system drops off to the east. And really beyond that, the predictability is a little bit too low. So here's a look at the precipitation as we track it through the weekend into early next week. There's that system moving through the south and the mid-south, even into the Great Lakes. Rain now, again, moving into parts of the east as we head into Saturday night, and then eventually it reaches the east coast. I think sometime late Sunday, we may see the rain into places like New York down to even into parts of Jersey, into Delaware, and into eastern Virginia. We're starting to dry out back here across the Mid-South and the Great Lakes ahead of our next system, which will bring some severe weather again across the northern plains. And as we head into Monday, we see the wet weather moving into the Great Lakes with another system moving into the west. That could bring a few rain and, yes, even some mountain snow showers in the highest elevations. Kind of unsettled here across the Great Lakes down into parts of the plains. And then next week, this will be pretty interesting to watch. We're going to have a pretty good push of cool air, and that could, I think, lead to some severe weather out ahead of this system that would move through sometime Thursday, really Wednesday, Thursday, potentially into Friday. Still some time to iron out the details on that one. Now, as we look at the tropics moving into next week, especially into next weekend, with this trough across the east, I think that's really going to inhibit any development here just because of the strong wind shear that we'll see here in the northern Gulf, even into parts of the Caribbean. Does that start to relax some? Maybe a little bit by the following week, the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th. We're starting to get really steamy with the ocean water here, getting well into the 80s in some areas, and that could lead to some storm development. All it takes is some kind of ridging to happen here, and then boom, it's on. So that's something I'll be keeping an eye on. If you enjoyed this content, if you've liked it so far, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. That really helps the channel a lot. Thank you guys for those of you who have done so, and I hope you have a great weekend. I'll catch you next time.